In 1900, nearly half of all Americans lived on a farm, and every single one of them could do things that would leave you helpless today. They fed whole families through brutal winters with no refrigerator, no grocery store, and no electricity. But here is the twist. Number 14 on this list was so effective that the U.S. government begged families to bring it back during 2 world wars. And number 3, food scientists now admit it creates something no factory in America can copy. These 30 skills were not hobbies. They were survival itself. And within 2 short generations, the machines erased almost every one of them. Before we count down, hit that subscribe button, because some of these your own grandparents did with their bare hands. Let us begin with number 30. Number 30, mowing hay with a scythe. Before the hay baler, before the tractor, a man walked into a field at first light with a curved blade and a whetstone in his back pocket. Mowing an acre of timothy and clover took the better part of a morning, the scythe swinging in long hissing arcs that laid the grass in neat windrows behind him. The real skill was not the swinging, it was the sharpening. Every few minutes he stopped to draw a stone along the edge until it sang, because a dull scythe doubled the labor and blistered the hands. A good mower could read the lay of a field and the dampness of the dew. When the horse-drawn mower arrived, then the tractor, this rhythm vanished. Today, almost no American alive can hang and whet a scythe the way every farm boy once could. Number 29, milking by hand. Long before milking machines hummed in stainless parlors, the day began and ended with a 3-legged stool and a tin pail. A farm wife or a child would press a forehead into the warm flank of a cow, work 2 teats in a steady alternating squeeze, and send streams ringing against the bottom of the bucket. A good milker stripped a cow dry in 8 minutes, twice a day, every day of the year, in heat and in ice. Cold mornings cracked the knuckles raw. The barn cats, lined up for a squirt, aimed straight from the udder. By 1950, the machines had taken over the big dairies, and the quiet music of hand milking, the steady hiss and ping, faded from the American barn for good. Number 28, churning butter. That tall wooden dasher churn on the back porch was the heartbeat of the farm kitchen. The wife skimmed cream from the morning's milk, let it sour just slightly, then pumped the dasher up and down for 40 long minutes until the cream broke and the butter came. You knew the moment by the sound, a heavier slap as the golden grains gathered. Then came the washing, the salting, and the pressing into a carved mold that stamped a sheaf of wheat onto every pound. A family churned several pounds a week and traded the surplus at the country store for coffee and sugar. The electric churn, then the dairy case, made the dasher a relic. Most Americans now have never once watched cream turn to butter under their own arm. Number 27, putting eggs down in water glass. Hens lay heavy in spring and barely at all in the dead of winter, so a thrifty farm wife preserved the spring bounty for the lean months. She dissolved sodium silicate, sold cheaply as water glass, mixed it with boiled water in a stone crock, and lowered fresh, unwashed eggs into the milky liquid. Sealed against air, those eggs kept for 8 or 9 months, good for baking straight through January. A single crock held dozens, costing only pennies in solution. This quiet trick fed countless families through winters when no hen would cooperate. The refrigerator and the year-round grocery shelf made it pointless, and the knowledge slipped away so completely that most people today have never even heard the words water glass. Number 26, living out of a root cellar. Dug into a hillside or beneath the kitchen floor, the root cellar was the family refrigerator, freezer, and pantry rolled into one cool, earthen room. Cabbages hung by their roots, potatoes and turnips filled bins of sand, apples nestled in straw so none touched its neighbor, and crocks of kraut fermented in the corner. The skill was knowing what kept and how. Onions needed dry air, carrots needed damp, and a single rotting apple could spoil a whole barrel if not caught. A well-stocked cellar carried a family from October clear to May. Cheap electricity and the home freezer emptied these rooms, and the careful art of storing a harvest in the dark was forgotten within a generation. Number 25, rendering lard. When a hog was butchered, nothing was prized more than the fat. The wife cut it into cubes and set it bubbling in a great iron kettle for hours, stirring so it never scorched until the fat melted clear and the crackling sank golden to the bottom. Strained through cloth into stone crocks, snow-white lard kept for a year without refrigeration. It fried the eggs, greased the wagon, shortened the pie crust, and made the cracklings that children fought over at the kettle's edge. A single hog yielded 40 pounds of it. Then came hydrogenated shortening in a can, marketed as modern and clean, and lard was branded the villain. Today's bakers are quietly rediscovering that nothing makes a flakier crust than the fat their great-grandmothers rendered for free. Number 24, making soap from lye and lard. Here is where it gets interesting, because this one nearly killed the people who got it wrong. Every spring, farm families saved wood ashes all winter to make lye, dripping water slowly through a barrel of ashes until the runoff was strong enough to float an egg. That caustic liquid, combined with rendered fat and boiled in a kettle outdoors, became soap. The danger was in the lye, which could blind or burn, so the recipe was guarded and respected. A single batch washed the family, the floors, and the laundry for months. The whole year's cleaning came out of one smoking kettle in the yard. The 5-cent bar of store soap ended the tradition, and almost no one now can make soap the way the Homestead once did. Number 23, dipping tallow candles. Before the kerosene lamp and long before the light bulb, winter evenings ran on candles the family made themselves. The wife saved beef and mutton tallow all year, melted it in a deep pot, and dipped a row of wicks again and again, letting each thin coat harden before the next. 200 dips might fill the candle box for the season. It was patient, smelly, repetitive work, usually done by lamplight on a cold November day. Each candle gave maybe an hour of weak yellow flame. Children read, and women sewed in that flickering circle of light. The kerosene lamp made dipping obsolete almost overnight, and the slow craft of turning kitchen fat into light disappeared from the American home. Number 22, curing meat in the smokehouse. The smokehouse was a small, windowless shed that held a family's most valuable possession, a winter's worth of meat. After butchering, hams and bacon and shoulders were rubbed with salt, sugar, and saltpeter, left to draw for weeks, then hung over a low smoldering fire of hickory or apple wood. The smoke and salt together preserved the meat without a lick of refrigeration, and a properly cured ham hung in the rafters for 2 years and only got better. The skill was in the temperature. Too hot, and the fat cooked and spoiled. Too cool, and the meat soured. A whole hog hung in there fed a family for a year. The deep freezer ended it, and the smokehouse rotted into a tool shed. Number 21, making sausage and head cheese. On butchering day, nothing went to waste, and the scraps the modern shopper never sees became the family's finest eating. Trimmings were ground by hand crank, seasoned with sage and pepper from the garden, and stuffed into cleaned casings, or pressed into patties fried and sealed under lard in a crock. The odd bits, the head and the feet, simmered for hours into head cheese, a savory loaf set firm in its own rich jelly and sliced cold onto bread. A single hog filled the smokehouse and the sausage crock both. These were the tastes of thrift, conjured from parts that asked nothing but patience and skill. The grocery meat case erased them, and the hand crank grinder went to the attic. Number 20, boiling sorghum molasses. In the late summer South and Midwest, sorghum making was a whole community event. Families grew tall cane, stripped the leaves, and ran the stalks through a horse-powered press, that crushed out a thin green juice. That juice was poured into long, shallow pans over a wood fire and boiled for hours, skimmed constantly as it darkened and thickened into amber syrup. The skill was knowing the exact moment it was done, a heartbeat before it scorched. A gallon of sorghum cost a day of hard, hot, sticky labor. It sweetened the biscuits, the gingerbread, and the morning oatmeal all winter when sugar was dear. Cheap factory sugar and corn syrup pushed sorghum to the margins, and the steaming evaporator pan fell silent across the land. Number 19, sugaring the maples. In the cold Northeast and upper Midwest, the first thaw of late winter meant sugaring time. Families tapped the sugar maples with a spout and a bucket, gathered the clear, watery sap by sled, and boiled it down over a roaring fire in the sugar house. It took a staggering 40 gallons of sap to make a single gallon of syrup, days of feeding the fire and watching the boil. The reward filled the whole hollow with sweet steam and gave the family syrup and hard sugar cakes for the year. Children waited for the treat of hot syrup poured on clean snow. Big commercial operations and cheap imitation pancake syrup made the family sugar bush a rarity, and the patient art of the boil grew scarce. Number 18, pressing cider and making apple butter. When the orchard came in, the whole family turned out for the cider press and the copper kettle. Wagon loads of apples were ground and pressed, the sweet juice running into barrels to drink fresh or let turn hard for the winter. The rest became apple butter, an all-day affair where the family took turns stirring a great kettle of cider and apples over an open fire with a long wooden paddle, never stopping because the moment you stopped, it scorched. Cinnamon and clove went in near the end. Crocks of dark spiced apple butter lined the cellar shelf for a year of breakfasts. The supermarket jar ended the cider pressing day, and the long stir went quiet. Number 17, keeping a sourdough alive. Before packaged yeast, a farm wife's most guarded treasure was her starter, a living crock of fermented flour and water she fed and protected like a member of the household. Some starters were carried west in covered wagons and passed down for 50 years. A spoonful raised the morning biscuits and the loaf bread, and a careful cook also kept saleratus and homemade perlash on hand for quick breads. Let the starter freeze or starve, and a generation of baking died with it. Neighbors shared a cup to revive a friend's failed crock. The little envelope of dependable store yeast, then the loaf truck, made the daily ritual unnecessary, and most American kitchens lost the living, breathing heart of their bread. Number 16, threshing grain by hand. After the wheat and oats were cut and stacked, the long winter work of threshing began. The dried sheaves were spread on the barn floor and beaten with a flail, two sticks joined by a leather hinge, swung overhead in a steady rhythm to knock the grain loose from the straw. Then came winnowing, tossing the mixture into the wind or before a fan so the light chaff blew away and the heavy kernels fell clean. It was dusty, aching, monotonous labor that filled the cold months. A family threshed its own bread and its own seed for next spring this way for centuries. The steam thresher, then the combine, swallowed the whole job in an afternoon, and the flail hung forgotten on a nail. Number 15, shucking and cribbing corn. The corn harvest pulled in the whole neighborhood for the husking bee, where families gathered around great heaps of ears and stripped the husks by hand late into the night. A wooden or iron shucking peg strapped to the palm ripped each husk open in a single practiced motion. The cleaned ears went into the slatted corn crib to dry, feeding the hogs, the chickens, and the family grist all winter. Tradition held that a young man who shucked a rare red ear earned a kiss, and the work flew by on laughter and cider. A skilled hand shucked a wagon load in an evening. The mechanical picker and sheller ended the husking bee, and one of the warmest rituals of farm life simply stopped. Number 14, drying the harvest. Here is the one the government came begging for. Long before the canning jar, families preserved food by drying it, and during both World Wars, Washington urged Americans to revive the old ways to stretch the nation's food. Green beans were strung on thread and hung to dry into what mountain families called leather breeches. Apples were peeled, cored, and laid on screens in the sun until leathery and sweet. Pumpkin was sliced in rings and hung from the rafters. Corn was dried and stored for hominy. Dried this way, a summer garden fed a family clear through the next spring, costing nothing but sunshine and patience. The freezer and the year-round produce aisle made it pointless, and a skill that won 2 wars faded from the kitchen. Number 13, plowing with a team. Before the tractor, the most respected skill on any farm was handling a team of horses or mules behind a plow. A good teamster walked miles a day in the furrow, reins looped behind his back, guiding a 1,000-pound animal by voice alone, G for right and haw for left. He knew each horse's temper, when to rest them, when to water them, how to keep a straight furrow across a rolling field. A boy spent years earning the right to take the lines. The bond between a farmer and his team was real, built over a decade of shared labor. The gasoline tractor replaced them in a single generation, and the language of working a team, G and haw, faded from the American tongue. Number 12, working your own forge. Most farms kept a small blacksmith shop because the nearest smith was a hard half-day's wagon ride away. The farmer heated iron cherry red in a coal forge, worked it on an anvil with a hammer, and mended his own plowshares, forged his own hinges, and reset the iron tires on his wagon wheels. He sharpened, he welded, he made the broken hole. A man who could not work iron was at the mercy of every breakdown miles from help. The skill took years to learn, reading the color of the heat and the ring of the hammer. Mass-produced replacement parts in the welding shop in town made the home forge unnecessary, and the anvil went silent on farm after farm. Number 11, splitting rails and laying fence. Before barbed wire and steel posts, a farmer fenced his land with timber he cut and split himself. He felled straight oak and chestnut, sawed it into lengths, and split each log into rails with iron wedges and a heavy maul, then stacked them in a zigzag worm fence that needed not a single nail. A strong man split 100 rails in a day, and a farm needed thousands. The skill was reading the grain so the log split clean instead of fighting back. Whole boyhoods were spent at the woodpile and the fence line. Cheap rolled barbed wire ended rail splitting almost overnight, and a craft that built the frontier, the very work that made Lincoln famous, all but disappeared. Number 10, witching for water. Before the well drilling rig, finding water was part science and part faith. A dowser, sometimes called a water witch, walked the land holding a forked willow branch loose in his hands, waiting for the tip to dip toward a hidden spring. Skeptics scoffed, but families swore by certain old men who never missed, and a good one was paid in eggs and goodwill. Then came the real labor, digging a well by hand. A man lowered in a bucket to pick at the earth 30 or 40 feet down, while another hauled the dirt up. Striking water was a day of celebration. The drilling truck made both the witch and the hand-dug well obsolete, and the forked stick wisdom faded into folklore. Number 9, reading the sky with no radio forecast and no weather app. A farmer's harvest, even his survival, depended on reading the heavens himself. He watched the ring around the moon for coming rain, the direction the cattle faced, the way the leaves turned their pale undersides up before a storm. Red sky at morning meant trouble, a ring around the sun, a shift in the wind, the ache in an old man's knee, all of it told him whether to cut his hay or leave it standing. Generations of close watching built a knowledge no almanac could match, passed from grandfather to grandchild on the porch. The television forecast made it seem quaint, and the deep, patient skill of reading the land's own signals quietly slipped away. Number 8. Saving the seed. This is the one that carried families across the centuries. Every fall, a wise farm wife and her husband chose the finest plants, the biggest tomato, the hardiest corn, the squash that kept longest, and saved their seed for spring. Beans were dried on the vine, melon seeds laid out on newspaper, corn hung by the husk in the attic where mice could not reach. Each variety was suited over decades to that exact farm's soil and weather, a living inheritance worth more than money. Families guarded heirloom seeds for 100 years and shared them with neighbors as a sacred trust. The hybrid seed catalog, sold fresh each spring and unable to be saved, broke the chain, and countless old American varieties vanished forever. Number 7. Spinning your own cloth. Before the dry goods store, a family clothed itself from the backs of its own sheep. The wool was sheared, washed, carded into fluffy rolls, then spun into yarn on a spinning wheel that hummed in the corner all winter. Some farms grew flax and broke it down into linen the same painstaking way. The yarn was dyed with walnut hulls and onion skins, then woven into cloth on a loom or knitted into socks and mittens by firelight. A single shirt represented weeks of labor from fleece to finished garment. Every farm girl learned the wheel before she learned to write. The textile mill and the mail-order catalog made home cloth a waste of effort, and the spinning wheel became a parlor decoration. Number 6. Quilting from scraps. Nothing on a farm was thrown away, least of all cloth, and the quilt was thrift turned into beauty. A wife saved every worn shirt, every flour sack dress, every outgrown apron, and cut the salvageable pieces into squares. Over the winter, she pieced them into intricate patterns with names like log cabin and wedding ring, then gathered the neighbor women around a frame for a quilting bee, their needles flying as they stitched the layers and gossiped the afternoon away. A good quilt held the memory of a family's whole wardrobe and lasted 50 years. It was warmth, art, and history sewn together for pennies. The cheap factory blanket and the busy modern life ended the quilting bee, and the scrap basket emptied. Number 5. Tanning hides. When an animal was butchered, its hide was far too valuable to waste. The farmers scraped it clean of flesh and hair, then cured it for weeks in a solution of oak bark or alum that turned raw skin into supple leather. It took patience and a strong stomach. The hide soaked and worked and stretched until soft. From that leather, a family made harness, shoe soles, laces, and work gloves, repairing their own gear instead of buying it. A single cowhide outfitted a family for years. The skill ran deep, judging when the hide was ready, working it soft so it never cracked. The leather factory and the cheap store-bought boot made home tanning pointless, and a craft as old as humanity left the American farm. Number 4. Robbing the bees. A few hives by the orchard gave a family its only steady sweetener besides sorghum, and beekeeping was a quiet art passed down with care. The keeper read the hive's mood, knew when to smoke the bees calm, and lifted the heavy combs heavy with golden honey, careful to leave the colony enough to survive the winter. He caught the spring swarms by hand, sometimes climbing a tree to shake a clustered swarm into a box. The honey sweetened the table, and the beeswax sealed jars and waterproof thread. A good keeper read the weather and the blossoms as closely as any farmer. Cheap refined sugar reduced honey to a luxury, and the everyday farm beekeeper tending a corner of the homestead grew rare. Number 3. Making farmhouse cheese. Here is the one food scientists now admit no factory can truly copy. With a surplus of milk and no way to keep it, the farm wife turned it into cheese that lasted for months. She warmed the raw milk, added rennet from a calf's stomach to set the curd, cut and cooked and pressed it, then salted the wheel and let it age for weeks in the cool cellar. The living cultures in that raw milk gave each farm's cheese a flavor as unique as its pasture, something the sterilized, standardized factory wheel can never reproduce. A single day's milking became a cheese that fed the family deep into winter. Pasteurization laws and the grocery cooler ended farmhouse cheesemaking, and a taste tied to one patch of American grass was lost. Number 2. Harvesting ice. Long before the electric freezer, a farm kept its food cold through summer with ice it cut from its own pond in the dead of winter. When the freeze ran a foot thick, men sawed the pond into great blue blocks, hauled them out with tongs and horses, and packed them in the ice house, buried under thick layers of sawdust. Stored that way, the ice lasted clear through August, keeping the milk and butter cold and making the rare summer treat of hand-cranked ice cream possible. It was brutal, dangerous, frozen work. A man could go through the ice in a heartbeat. The electric refrigerator made it all unnecessary, and the ice house and the saw and the tongs vanished from the farm. Number 1. Hog Killing Day. And at the very top stands the day that anchored the whole farm year, the autumn hog butchering. When the first hard cold settled in, neighbors gathered before dawn to help one another because no family could do it alone. Great kettles of water steamed over outdoor fires, and from a single morning's work came the entire winter's provision. The hams and bacon bound for the smokehouse, the lard rendered in the iron pot, the sausage ground and seasoned, every scrap turned to use. It was hard, solemn, communal labor, rewarded with a shared meal and the deep security of a full smokehouse. Children remembered it all their lives as the day the community became one family. Nothing was wasted, and no one went hungry. The packing plant and the supermarket case ended it, and with it ended the greatest gathering of the farming year. Across all 30 skills, from the hiss of a scythe in the morning hay to the great communal work of Hog Killing Day, these dying farm arts tell a single powerful story of self-reliance, thrift, and a knowledge written into the hands of a whole nation. Some, like making soap from lye or tanning a hide, stand as stark reminders of how hard life once was. Others, like saving seed or keeping a sourdough alive, reveal a wisdom we are only now realizing we should never have let go. The common thread is that nothing was wasted and nothing was bought that could be made. Within 2 short generations, the machines did the work, and the skills slipped quietly away. Your grandparents knew them. Now you know what was lost. Tell me in the comments which one you wish you still knew how to do.